Today, I want to talk about something that I thought I really understood, especially as a professional detailer that had been around for so long and done so many different cars and in a variety of different ways. I thought I had a pretty good understanding, and I guess I did, but until I really started going through the process of developing my own polish, I didn't really have a full grasp at what the difference between a compound and a polish was. And so today I thought I'd talk about what I've learned, at least, the difference between compounds and polishes are, what makes them different, and honestly, how the whole thing is kind of way more nuanced than I ever realized. And I think when we go back and look at some of the videos I did with Tom, which, compound versus polish, you could see kind of my wheels spinning of like, I don't get it. Like, I get it, but I don't get it. Like, what is the difference between a polish and a compound? So this is just kind of me talking out loud of the best of my understanding of what a compound versus a polish is, and working with Tom and Walter and getting a full-blown education over the past 6 months in developing the picture perfect polish. And so I really want to try to cut through the confusion, explain what really matters when it comes to a polish or a compound. And here's a little teaser. It's not about whether it's called a polish or a compound. And so I don't know. I just want to kind of get this out there because I feel like it needs to be out there. And so it's just my real behind the scenes kind of product development thoughts, really. And so because I think I was like a lot of people, and I kind of had it like, okay, if it's super aggressive, it's a compound. If it's, finishing, it's a polish, right? Pretty simple. So, I would look at it like compounds had more cut, polishes had more gloss, right? If it finishes like crap, it's probably a compound. If it did nothing, it's a polish. That's pretty much what my, test method was. And so, but again, now that I've been through the process of actually formulating one, I found that the truth is that the abrasive is the big deal. That is the main character. All the cut, all the finish, behavior, it starts with the abrasive section. It starts with the abrasive. You need to find the main, that is the main character. The main ingredient is the abrasive. Maybe not by percentage of volume, but definitely with whatever, whatever result you're trying to achieve, it all comes down to the abrasive. So here's some things I learned. There's diminishing versus non-diminishing. There's particle size. There is shape. There is consistency. There's like diminishing, the abrasives break down as you work them. Non-diminishing abrasives being they don't break down. And I now see why there are whole companies that only do polishes and compounds. Because you could literally spend months and months and months and months testing just different abrasives. Just abrasives. Because there's so many aluminum oxide. There's so many uses for aluminum oxide. There's so many different options of aluminum oxide that it totally makes sense to me why there's companies that literally only do polishes and compounds. That's it. And I get it. With like Tom, it's like I get why you would only mainly focus on one product, because once you have that nailed down, it's so time consuming to do that. And then once you have it nailed down, and if you truly have something different, I realize how you could go all in on that, and it makes total sense, right? Total sense. So, and I see with other companies that all they do is polishes and compounds, is that you go through so many different iterations that you actually find stuff like, oh, if someone needed like really heavy aggressive cut, this would actually work very well. It doesn't finish nice, but this works really well, right? Maybe we'll have that as like a heavy cut, right? So again, you could take one abrasive and make it cut like a compound. You could soften it, make it finish like a polish. It really all depends on the abrasive that you're starting with. And so, but deeper than just the abrasive, this is a total another thing that blew my mind, is that not all abrasives are created equal. Where they come from really, really matters. And so this adds another layer of complexity. And in fact, this is what I ran into with developing the Picture Perfect polish, is that the original abrasive that I was putting in the formula that Tom had sourced was 90, like, I don't even know what percentage to put it, 95% perfect. But there was a few areas, in particular, soft B-pillars, shiny black plastic B-pillars, that the abrasive just didn't and wasn't finishing out right. And so we needed to source different abrasives for that, right? Because it worked so good on paint. It worked so good in so many different situations. Single stage, base coat, clear coat, works so good in so many different situations, except for this last little part. I would even call that maybe 1%. I don't think shiny black B-pillars even accounts for 5% of paint polishing. But so then we went down a super, super deep dive on different abrasives. And there's Chinese abrasives or Chinese aluminum oxide. A lot of them are cheaper, but they're a lot less consistent. And it's really, really difficult to shift through and to know if you're actually getting what they say you're getting. And then there's lead times. It takes a long time because it's coming from China. Shipping's expensive. A lot of time underneath the microscope. Verifying what they sent is actually what they said they were saying. There's American abrasives that you have way more control over. You can get them faster usually, but they're usually the most expensive way to get abrasives. Another hint is that the Picture Perfect polish uses American abrasives. Okay. There's also European abrasives, which are typically the higher quality. They're more refined. They give you a cleaner finish. But sometimes you can use a cheaper abrasive and still achieve what you're looking for. That goes into the bigger scope of the polish or the compound in general when you mix it with everything else. So the problem that I ran into and the thing that really blew my mind is sometimes you think you're comparing apples to apples, but you're actually like comparing like gravel to diamonds or like apples to oranges, I guess. And so sometimes you know, just is daunting to even think about it. And I still have a little PTSD, not to make light of that, but there were so many revisions that happened and so many things that happened that it's just so daunting of a task to even think of. And I'm glad we are where we are now, where we settled on a really, really good end result. But just thinking about how many different abrasive options there are is totally overwhelming. And so what you do, or what I did, was I leaned on the expertise of the aluminum oxide manufacturers to kind of steer us in the right direction. The problem with that is that you're dealing with salespeople who want to sell. So they will not tell you what you want to hear, but in a way, they will sell you on what they think is the best fit, which is not always the best fit. So switching this abrasive source can change the performance dramatically. So I know Tom was looking at some Chinese abrasives. He was getting his from an American source as well, I believe. And so, yeah, the one we kind of settled on is, for me, for the Picture Perfect polish, is also an American source as well. But we kind of refine it a little bit differently in-house before we add it to the formula. Because once you have your abrasive, the next step is to actually make that abrasive usable. And that's where all these other ingredients come in. The oils, in the Picture Perfect polish, I believe there's about 12 or 13 total ingredients that come all together to make the final formula. So, the oil mix determines how long it works, whether it dusts, because aluminum oxide by nature dust. And so the rest of the ingredients in the formula are there to give you work time, workability, obviously for the aluminum oxide, which is a powder. And so it will dust by nature. So it's all about encapsulating that dust on a super microscopic level so that you don't actually see the dusting. How easy it is to wipe off. We see this so often with other compounds and polishes in the market. You need a, rinseless wash, dampened towel to remove the residue. And so that comes into play, whether it finishes clear or hazy. Again, going back to the abrasive. And so there's different carrier oils, there's different lubricating agents, there's emulsifiers, there's oils that, make it feel great and not super like gritty in your hand, but then it leaves a greasy residue. So a lot of the other popular polishes or compounds I'll say polishes out on the market right now, when they have really good work time, they usually tend to be a little bit greasier, grabbier, harder to remove. And that's because, one, they're using the wrong oil solvent combination, wrong in my opinion. And so, or too much oil, which is mainly the case. If you look at their SDS sheets, if they're telling the truth, a lot of these, like 3D1, I think it is, I know a couple other ones that I don't want to mention, have about 20 to 30% oil, which is significant. And so and they do that to give it better work time, better workability, but it usually will make for a harder wipe off. And so that was a whole lesson I had to learn, and that is like, where's that balance between giving a product good workability and then not making it hard to wipe off. So we did some interesting outside the box thinking there as well. And again, not to mention, how does this work with the abrasive, right? And so in contrast, I'll tell you, and the reason why you could do stuff like ceramic coat right over the top of the Picture Perfect polish is because our oil content is between, I think, 12 and 15% in the formula. So it's less than half of what a lot of these other compounds or polishes use that have high workability. And what that translates to in the real world is that there's a lot of oil left behind on the surface with these other polishes, whereas with the Picture Perfect polish, most of that oil, if not all of that oil, is completely off the surface after you've worked the product properly and then wiped the surface off with a towel. You have removed virtually all of the oil on the surface. So that is why you're starting with half as much as these other polishes that have really good work time. And so, yeah, but again, I'm trying to explain it in the most efficient way possible, but getting to this end result of this polish was incredibly difficult for, those trying to find that balance too. And then analyzing, reverse engineering popular polishes and compounds on the market, as well as taking insight from Tom and Walter at the same time and kind of figuring out, okay, what do I want my end result to be? What are the capabilities of both those guys, and how can we figure out something that meets the end result that my North Star that I am trying to accomplish? How do we get there, and then work our way backwards, right? And so we even used AI to help analyze a vast library of SDS sheets to see what the commonalities were and where there were maybe gaps, right? So we even leveraged modern technology to try to help us understand how we might be able to make a better formula. So again, once you have your abrasive, then making the next step is actually making it usable, which is incredibly difficult. And by the way, it is my understanding that you either have non-diminishing abrasives or you have diminishing abrasives. I did see a video recently where someone talked about how they had, an abrasive that started big and then worked its way down to smaller, but it wasn't non-diminishing. And that is completely contradictory to itself. So if you have a diminishing abrasive, Tom has talked about this multiple times on my channel, a diminishing abrasive starts as a big rock, and as you work it, it gets to a smaller and smaller rock. The problem with a diminishing abrasive is that they all break down at different levels and different times, depending upon all the other factors, some of these which we talked about, whereas a non-diminishing abrasive will stay the same size the whole entire time you're working it. That is, to my understanding. I don't think I'm wrong. I think I understood that. But when someone talks about a diminishing abrasive in their formula and talks about how it is big when you get started and then works its way down to smaller and then stops at a certain point, like it in and of itself has some like technology that it knows what perfect size to stop at. That is just a misunderstanding on that person's front, right? At least that's my understanding. But I heard that and kind of piqued my interest of like, well, how does that work? Oh, that's right, it doesn't. So again, very, very complicated though to not only formulate this, but also understand it too. So again, it's not, polish or compound. Really, it is. That is like the easy way to kind of categorize stuff. But it's really comes down to how good the formula is built around these really good abrasives, right? And so everything plays together. The abrasive, the oil balance, the solvent that you use, and then we haven't even got into like pad choice, machine speed, paint type. So you can make a polish that cuts like a compound with the right build, and that's what my goal was. So when we built the Picture Perfect polish, I called it a polish for a reason, because we found that perfect abrasive that finishes like a dream. It's completely clear, easy wipe off. However, it can still cut like a compound. So, and that has a lot to do with choosing an American-made abrasive that is of the highest quality possible, and the surrounding ingredients as well are the highest possible we could choose. Everyone cheaps out. Even Walter is upset with the price of the ingredients, and I agree with him maybe, but I'm okay with it being expensive to make. I feel like if the product is that good and that different, which I believe there's no product like the Picture Perfect polish, it's well worth it, and people will see that and understand that, and will be willing to pay honestly a few dollars more for something that is significantly better and replaces multiple products, because then it's cheaper, right? So I think the Picture Perfect polish replaces all of your compounds and polishes, which is where I think the industry is going. I think, we used to have the 3-step process and stuff like that, and now we start to see, a lot of brands talk about like a compound and a polish, like a 2-step process. And I just think we're going to a single product system. I just really do. And so I think Tom nailed it with System 1 way back in the day. And so I think the Picture Perfect polish is the perfect continuation of that single product system. And I think it's just totally pad dependent. So depending upon what you want to do or trying to do, you can do it. Rotary with wool to cut down 1,500 grit sand marks, you could do it. You want to finish out and prep before a coating, you can do it, right? And that's how we found that perfect abrasive, or you can do that because we found that perfect abrasive. So, again, and do it without dusting, finishing clean, doesn't stink, does not smell at all, and it's 100% flexible across pads and machines, because more than anything, and I've tested this on hammered paint, soft paint, black paint, in the sun paint, in the shade paint, in humidity paint, all the paint, right? And the ultimate goal for me, because it's in line with what my product brand stands for, is that I want to simplify the process. For the DIYer, it makes it manageable to kind of enter into this big scary thing of paint polishing. And for the professional, it makes it easier to simplify the process. If you just have a liquid that works and all you have to do is switch your pad, that is so much better. That is so much better. So the professional gets more efficient. The DIYer, it becomes more approachable, right? And at the end of the day, it's just a better product. And that's what my product line stands for, is just having better products. And this is really a product that I think is going to set my product brand apart. So ultimately, to kind of recap, compounds and polishes aren't as different, I think, as I had originally thought. And I don't think they're as different as people actually think. Really is all about the abrasive and how the rest of the formula makes that abrasive work. That's really what it comes down to. So if you want something that completely simplifies the whole process, cuts great, finishes even better, doesn't dust, good wipe off, doesn't make your whole shop smell, you can check out the Picture Perfect Polish. I'll have it linked below. It's at jimbosdetailing.com. So thanks for tuning in, and hit me up if you got the polish related questions or if you've already gotten it and tried it. Love to hear your feedback. You can also leave a comment below and what your results were for the Picture Perfect Polish after hundreds and hundreds of bottles got shipped out recently, and the reviews are starting to come in. So that's very, very exciting. And of course, it's the reviews are a little bit better than what I expected, but pretty much on par with what I expected. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed that one, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.